My favorite bat is Hippocidrus vittatus. I've got absolutely nothing more than just the beauty of the bat that makes me like that bat. From my first encounter with that bat in one of the caves in Zimbabwe, I was just surprised. It's got huge round eyes. It's furry, it's fluffy. It looks something. It looks like something that would be good as a pet. And it's so strong. It's got thick membranes in its wings. And when it turns around to look at you, you feel like a human being has turned around to look at you. It's got expression on its face.
A lot of people don't like bats. Even Batman is afraid of them. But maybe people are just afraid of what they don't know. Today, Dr. Greg Mutumi talks to us about what makes bats so unusual, interesting, and like he said earlier, cute. This is Radiobio.
Don't know much biology.
Hello and welcome to Radiobio. I am Jeff.
And I'm Austin. We are joined here today by Dr. Gregory Mutumi, a postdoctoral researcher at the University of California, Merced.
Welcome.
Thank you.
So, just to get started, could you tell us a little bit about yourself? Who are you and what do you study?
I'm a field biologist. I enjoy outdoors like crazy. I enjoy looking at nature's diversity and discovering new information about patterns and processes that govern life in general. Currently, I'm looking at the roles of sensory structures in the diversification of New World leaf-nosed bats.
So when you say sensory structures, it's just how these bats hear, see, smell. So what are you looking at specifically in these bats?
You're right. I'm looking at the overall perception of their environment, of their surroundings, as well as how they get access to essential resources like diet, like food, like partners, and so on.
And so why study bats specifically? What role do they play kind of in larger systems?
I've just been curious about bats, and they're also very diverse. They're actually number 2 in diversity after the rodents, I think.
Wow.
And they show remarkable adaptations, bizarre phenotypes, bizarre behaviors. And to think of a mammal that is flying, other mammals that have been said to fly, like the flying lemur or the flying squirrels, don't fly, they glide. Yeah. So it looks like an animal made up of different parts from different animals, and it combines this flight capability together with what they call echolocation. It sees with its ears. It makes it very interesting. So I got so curious about bats and just started studying bats. I haven't stopped.
What's the importance of studying bats and echolocation? What are some of the questions that sort of drive your current research?
My main question is to find out what drives the diversity in the lineages or in the different behaviors of bats. We find bats that are eating insects. We find bats that are lapping blood. We find bats that are eating other smaller vertebrates. Bats that are foraging on fruit. And it's amazing the diversity of features, body size, echolocation, shapes of the skulls, sensory capabilities, huge diversity. So we're trying to look for what accounts for this huge diversity seen in bats relative to other orders of animals that have not shown such a diversity.
Being the second largest order of mammals, bats comprise about 20% of all classified mammal species worldwide, with over 1,200 species. So with tons of species and a lot of interesting and different adaptations around the world, Dr. Mutumi can make comparisons across many species to understand how bats evolved the traits they have.
Okay, so you've probably heard the cliche blind as a bat, but are bats actually blind?
Wow, yeah, that is one of the misconceptions about bats. Phrases like as blind as a bat. People generally thought that bats were blind, but they've got good vision, and in some instances other species have got even better vision than the vision that we have. They can pick up different colors, and others are able to pick up ultraviolet vision. So they can pick up ultraviolet rays reflected from flowers, which actually helps them pick up flowers that have got good nectar, and they facilitate the pollination of those flowers. So they actually see, even though their eyes are much smaller relative to other sensory structures, like what we see in other mammals, relative to the cochlea, for example, which I said they see with their ears. Therefore, that sensory structure, the cochlea, that analyzes, that picks up and interprets sound, turning it into impulses that are sent to the visual cortex, where it is interpreted into an image. Those structures are actually bigger relative to the eyes, in contrast to what we see in other animals that are depending on mostly on vision. So during the day, when there is adequate light, they can actually see, or when there is limited light, they can actually see. But in total darkness, they can also navigate and detect targets and detect prey in total darkness from the sound. And the process of how they see from sound is they emit ultrasonic signals, and these signals hit onto targets within their surrounding, within their environment, returning echoes. So these ultrasonic or high frequency signals can be reflected from targets, returning an echo which they listen to within their ears, and from that echo they can actually construct a visual within their brains.
That's so cool.
Of a 3D representation of their surrounding and targets surrounding them.
I never knew that. So it's not just even detecting what it is. They're actually building. They literally are, like you said, seeing with their ears. So the sound's interpreted to an actual visual.
It's an actual
That's so cool.
3D visual in their brain. They actually perceive the object in their brain, like we're doing with light. The difference is that light is from an external source, but they produce their own medium, which they propagate into the atmosphere, and it hits against targets and items within its environment. Then it interprets a returning echo. Some echolocation frequencies are fine-tuned for hot and dry regions. Others are fine-tuned for warm and wet regions. For example, high frequency. The higher the frequency of sound, the more it gets attenuated by atmospheric conditions. So those species that specialize in areas that are hot and humid, where there's likely to be high attenuation,
Is it like the moisture in the air is kind of making it harder for that frequency to get through?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So you find that in those areas you would find species that have a lower frequency range. And if a species that is coming out from a less attenuated type of habitat tries to move over to a humid environment, they won't really survive in that condition. So it sort of partitions the different resources and different habitats across different species.
So what are some other unique adaptations bats have for finding food?
Oh yes, like I said earlier on, they can see, they can pick up ultraviolet. They have ultraviolet vision. They also have some also have developed a very sensitive sense of smell. Others a sense of touch, and for example, if you look at the vampire bats, they've got capability to pick up heat signals, like that which is found in the rattlesnake, but not maybe as developed. There isn't evidence yet whether it is as developed as what is found in the rattlesnake. So within its nose leaf, these vampire bats can pick up heat signals, and it after it echolocates to localize or to detect where the animal is, it can home in on a specific area on that animal where the blood veins are flowing close to the surface. And so that's for heat. Then for smell, others have fine-tuned sense of smell to be able to pick up smell of ripening fruit. Even in total darkness, they can track down ripening fruit in total darkness.
So, does the evolution of one sensory structure, say the cochlea for hearing, affect the evolution of other sensory structures for things like smell and sight?
Oh yes, sensory structures are competing for space within the head. And there's a paper that has actually shown that evolution of the cochlea that processes sound trade-offs with the canal radius, which caters for balance. And that actually determines the different flight patterns and echolocation capacities within different taxa of bats.
So what about climate change? How would that affect bats?
Well, we talked to Dr. Mutumi about how the environment influences echolocation.
The main thing that affects echolocation could be atmospheric conditions, like I mentioned earlier on. So, for example, in the event of climate change, when temperatures increase, there is an implication to what happens with the way sound is propagated in the atmosphere. And actually, with high temperatures, there is high attenuation of sound signals. And there's actually a paper that has shown that with an increase of about 2 to 3 degrees Celsius in temperature, there's a particular frequency beyond which species that are echolocating below that particular frequency will lose their capability to detect prey. So they will lose the detection range, the range that their echo can travel within that different...
So 2 degrees Celsius and these bats just cannot find any food anymore.
They cannot find any food anymore, and that
very significant.
leads to drastic decrease in population numbers of bats. And it could be actually one of the reasons why there has been a steep decline in the numbers of some bat species in different parts of the globe.
So when did bat echolocation evolve? Were the earliest bats able to echolocate? How do we know when traits like flight and echolocation evolved?
At the present moment, the oldest fossil that has been discovered is called the Onychonycteris finiae. Onychonycteris finiae was discovered in Wyoming, and studying the characteristics of the skull that was found showed that this bat was not yet capable of echolocating, but it was flying. So it is most probable that flight evolved first before echolocation. They actually measured the auditory bullae, which are those structures housing the cochlea, and compared the sizes of those auditory bullae. Like I told you earlier on, that the size of the cochlea relative to the size of the bat shows how sophisticated, or shows how the type of signal that it is using. And that size of the auditory bullae was more similar to the sizes of the auditory bullae of species that do not echolocate. So there is a high chance that flight evolved first before echolocation. And if it evolved, if they started off without echolocation, it implies that there were multiple independent evolution events of echolocation in different clades of bats.
While evolving a trait like echolocation seems highly improbable, we know it's possible. Whales and other marine mammals have also evolved echolocation. This is convergent evolution, or the evolution of a trait multiple times independently across the tree of life.
So can we make educated guesses about the lifestyle of a bat based on its skull shape?
Oh yes, because the shape of the skull tracks the bite force delivered, and the bite force tracks along with the different diets that the bat is eating.
And so how do you actually measure this stuff? So you talked about bite force, skull shape, echolocation, the cochlea. So what are, in your specific research, what are you measuring and how do you measure that?
Okay, in my research at present, I'm focusing mostly on morphology. So I'm actually measuring different parameters from the skull, from different structures, within and outside the head. We use 3D microcomputer tomography technology, where an X-ray beam is hit through the material, and it reflects different rays of lights, which can be interpreted into a 3D volume file. So that 3D volume file has all the tissues that make up the head of the bat. You can separate the muscle from the bone, from the brain, from the olfactory bulb, from the eyes, from the teeth if you want, from the tongue to the palate, and place landmark coordinates or specific measurements to quantify shape and size of the different structures that you're interested in.
So you said you handled these guys in the field. How do you actually go about doing that? So how do you conduct field work for bats? How do you measure the sounds of a bat? How do you even physically catch a bat to then measure things about it?
Field work for bats is the most exciting part of my career. Okay. Firstly, to capture the bat, I have used hand nets, which is just like a net at the end of a long stick.
Like a large butterfly net.
Like a large butterfly net.
Wow.
Swoop the bat within the cave, and it falls into the pocket, and you take out bat and put it in a bag. And we also have an ultrasonic microphone that can pick up the ultrasonic signals that the bat is releasing, and you direct it towards the microphone, you record the sound signal.
Do you hold the bat up to the microphone?
Yes. Just like what you're doing to me.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you so much.
Somewhere out in the dark, warm or cold, there are creatures that are hanging around, I'm told. Not right side up, but upside down, and they might live in your town.
This has been Radiobio with Dr. Greg Mutumi. Thanks for
When
listening.
the sun sinks low, they'll take flight, 'cause they sleep in the day, they don't hunt in the light, and catch their dinner in the dark of night, using sound instead of sight. Sound instead of sight. 'Cause that's all.
This episode of Radiobio was produced by Kinsey Brock and edited by Jeff Lauder. The interviewers were Jeff Lauder and Austin Perry. Episode artwork was drawn by Kinsey Brock. And a special thanks to the Whiz Pops for the lovely song about the bats you hear now. More information about the band at thewizpops.com.
Radiobio is produced by graduate students at the University of California, Merced. Support for Radiobio comes from the Quantitative and Systems Biology Graduate Group, the School of Natural Sciences, and the Graduate Division at UC Merced. You can help support Radiobio's mission of increasing scientific literacy in California's Central Valley and beyond by donating at giving.ucmerced.edu/radiobio. Find out more about our mission, events, and podcasts at www.radiobio.net.
Moths and mosquitoes.